I am Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Liam Carrigan and Ian Conroy. We've got an international flavour, and it's New Zealand and Japan. And we can throw in a wee bit of Dunfermline as well, a wee bit of Fife. There we go. Sorry for the delay and going live there, probably my fault. Ian and Liam, we are entering yet another international break. We're getting used to these things, Ian. And I just feel that there's too many of them, and it seems to stifle us a wee bit. And I think that the running form we're on at the moment has prompted me to ask the big question: how close are we to witnessing a vintage Rodgers Celtic side? Now, I know people will say, look, it's too early. We won an invincible treble first time round, etc., etc. But let's just bask in our glory for a moment or two, Ian. There's too much negativity in the world. Let's be positive. How impressed have you been, and how close do you think we are to that vintage Celtic side that Rodgers had in season one, maybe for the first 18 months of his first tenure?
I think we're there. And I is kind of I owe Dermot Desmond an apology as well, because he was the man who was instrumental in bringing Rodgers back. I don't think it was the rest of the board. So really, really pleased about that, because obviously it's really clicked up into gear. I think, in answer to the question, that we're there already. I think we're at that vintage sort of moment, and it has been that, I've said it before, it's been that quiet evolution. So Brendan came out and said, that this time last year, if this game had been last year, we could have lost it, or probably would have lost it. So I tend to agree with that. I don't think we were quite at it against Kilmarnock. That intensity kind of dropped a wee bit. Maybe it was a bit of a Euro hangover, delayed. I don't know, but we got there in the end. So we're going to have that throughout the course of a season, and the fact that we can see these games through and get them over the line is really important, and a testament to the way that Brendan's got the team operating. Obviously there was changes at the weekend, and that's why we've got the strength and depth of the squad, that we can sort of rotate, and we can get these games over the line. So I think we're starting to witness that vintage Rodgers Celtic side, and I hope that he stays long enough so he can keep adding to it. Because imagine, say it was 2 or 3 years down the line, who knows how far we could go, and he could really sort of get that statue, get it dusted down, and as Kev says, and it's and really leave his mark and legacy in the history of our club.
Yeah, sitting in Kevin's shed at the moment, alongside an unused treadmill, etc., and all these other things that we buy that become clothes horses. And I think Kev, for quite a few years, was looking to melt it down for scrap, Liam, but his Brendometer has gone right back up, and Brendan has gone way up in his stakes as well, and his estimation. Just to remind everybody, what was peak Brendan first time round? Let's look at the Scottish Cup final, where we ensured an invincible treble way back in 2017, guys. I mean, this was the season that a Celtic State of Mind started to broadcast live, and broadcast a weekly podcast as well. Our team that day against Aberdeen, where we beat them 2-1. You'll never forget that Rodgick moment. It is in the Celtic folklore. The team lined up as follows: Craig Gordon, Mika Lustig, Dedrick Boyata, Jozo Simunovic, Kieran Tierney, Callum McGregor, Scott Brown, Stuart Armstrong, Patrick Roberts, Lee Griffiths, and Scott Sinclair. On the bench that day were Doris de Vries, mind him, Nir Beaton, Moussa Dembele. Whatever happened to Moussa Dembele? Christian Gamboa. Tommy Rogic started on the bench. Eric Sviachenko and James A. Forrest. The evergreen Forrest and McGregor, Liam, still with us, still contributing. When you look back, are you surprised at that team, or is it as great and vintage as you remember?
No, I mean that at the time it was a very good team, and you could argue that it's only maybe the last year or two we've actually replaced a couple of those players. I mean, Paddy Roberts in particular. I think we're seeing now that Nicholas Kuhn could be the next sort of iteration of that type of winger, and obviously we've got Dyson down the left. I know who's a completely different player from Scott Sinclair, but I think provides a very similar sort of good wing play and also goals now and again. So yeah, I think those were the two names that really stuck out to me there as two that until recently, I don't think we'd ever really replaced. You could argue Simonovic at the back as well, because we've been kind of chopping and changing there. But Liam Scales has barely put a foot wrong since he's got a run in the team, and now Trusty's come in and he looks to be settling in well. So we've strengthened there as well. That was a great team, but I honestly think our team now is stronger.
It's an interesting debate. We could probably dedicate an entire show to this, Ian, because you look at things like, okay, let's look at the wingers, right? So would you take Robertson Sinclair as your two wingers, or would you take Kuhn and Maeda? Discuss, and you could probably run through the team and have these types of discussions. But I think going back to your original point, it is looking pretty well matched, isn't it? And I know it's difficult to say, right, would the Lisbon Lions beat the great Liverpool side that won the European Cup, etc.? This is all fantasy football. But when you look at that team compared to the one we've got now, I think the point you make is that we are building some. I think we're in the throes of building something special. We come out of every transfer window stronger than when we went in, as cliched as that sounds. And within a couple of years, you then have a team that is capable, I think, of doing special things and potentially making even more progress in Europe, because we've got to keep one eye on that, Ian. We've got to keep one eye on Europe. You want to domestically dominate, but you want to do it with a purpose. It's not just so you can count the tallies and count them up and lord it over your opposition. It's so you can build a stronger side for Europe. That is always the key, isn't it?
Of course it is. Of course it is. And I think in terms of the recruitment, it's a clear identity that Brendan Rodgers has in terms of his style of play. So therefore, it should make it easier for the recruitment process. Obviously, you've got to go out and find these players, but at least then you've got a round peg, and you've got to go and find a round peg for that round hole, all across the board. So, but obviously we're being maximum lyrical recently about our performances in Europe. I think this new format in the Champions League, where we're not playing teams twice, is a really big bonus for us, the likes of ourselves. And of course, I mean, that's going back to the sort of the Jock Stein era, we were synonymous with Europe. We were a European side, and we still have that reputation to a degree in terms of our name, not in terms of our success or the marks we've made, but certainly the hoop jersey. We're an iconic, like an Ajax, we're an iconic European team still because of those, going back to those days. So how nice would it be for Brendan Rodgers? And I think he is a better manager since he's come back from Leicester. I really do. I think it's like I was listening to a podcast with Bobby Bluebell and Graham Skinner the other day on BBC Scotland, and they were saying about, as footballers, obviously you decline as a sports person as you get older, and same as a musician. How can you get any worse? You're only going to get better. I think as a man, it's true as a manager as well. How can you get worse with every experience that you have, even if it's a failure? If you go into a new job, if you've got something about you, that you're still that experience is going to lend itself well to your next thing. And I think that's happening with Brendan now in Europe. He had some varying degrees of success in Europe with Leicester, so it only adds into the mix. So yeah, it really is important. That's why Brendan, one of the main sort of factors in his return, he said, that he wanted to make a mark in Europe. So yeah, it's really important, and I think we'll continue to develop. I think the board, they'll back him. They seem to be, he seems to have their trust. With the fact that he's pushed the boat out and got spent 11 million on Engels. I think that's the board trust that we can probably make that back, 3 or 4-fold. And he's starting to show why he brought him to the team. So I think that evolution will continue. And hopefully it just bears fruit as it seems to be in this short period of time in Europe.
Yeah, it's interesting that you were watching Bobby Bluebell or listening to Bobby Bluebell podcast this morning, Ian, because I was doing something pretty similar on account of the fact that This Is Acsom this week stars not Bobby, because he's not in Glasgow today, but Ken McCluskey. And we did hope to have the pair of them on the show, which would have been a cracker. I mean, let's go back years ago, you and I discussing, imagine getting guys like that around a table and talking about music and football and culture. Well, that was the plan today, and hopefully we'll catch up with Bobby at some point in the future. But Ken certainly will be on the show on Friday night. We're going to be chatting to Ken McCluskey today. And
he's a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm listening to a lot of the kind of things that he's maybe been asked in previous podcasts. and interviews, and you want to expand on some of them. What will we be talking about today? Well, a massive focus on the fact that the Bluebells are playing at the Barras next year for the first time in such a lengthy career. I think the band got together in 81. I think that's when they actually formed, and then split up in 86 after some really good success. And then obviously they came back. We all know the story. Volkswagen had a wee helping hand in that. But we'll be talking about all of that, the Barras, we'll be talking Celtic, we'll be talking European memories and also European aspirations. Now, I'm going to bring this up. No favouritism intended, ladies and gents, because
he ran Electric Honey as well. You know Electric Honey, the label that had Bill Sebastian. Ken? Yeah, it was Ken.
What was it?
The early Snow Patrol stuff. Yeah, he's been so Ken was synonymous with all that, for all the sort of early breakthrough bands in Glasgow. That was Ken.
Right, that's another question really for important. Today. I'm glad I asked you that, because I'm right now. Yeah. Absolutely will. I'm also going to be asking about his trip to Kiev in 1986 as well. No doubt that there'll be a few laughs. No, I'm really looking forward to it. And this is Acsom is all about speaking to Celtic fans with a story, Celtic fans with a tale to tell. And the one thing that binds us all is that Celtic state of mind. Now, at the possibility of saying, a lot of people in the comments saying that Jungle Lion's your favourite commenter. I'm going to bring one up before I bring you up, Jungle Lion, okay? So Celtic follower Phil hates these international breaks, and I've got to agree with you on that. But we will be talking all things Celtic, where we are right now. And Jungle Lion's asked me to define vintage. Well, what I would say in relation to the vintage Brendan Rodgers team is it was that team that won the Invincible treble. Now, I've focused on the Scottish Cup final. That potentially wasn't his best starting 11, because if I was to pick the starting 11 personally, Moussa Dembele would have been in there. He was obviously just coming back to fitness. Tommy Rogic under Brendan, I'm not sure if he would have got a start, but you know what I mean. We could probably discuss this. So the vintage team were the team that dominated the Scottish game for me, Liam. But the one thing they didn't really have was a really good showing in Europe. I know there was a few results first time round. You can point to the Anderlecht result, the Manchester City results, but I don't think we had a right good run. So if we were to be able to, dominate domestically this season, and I'm not getting ahead of myself, and also have a run in Europe, then you've peaked, in my view. What about yourself? It's hard to define, but that would be my take on it.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. When someone says to me vintage Celtic, I tend to think back to, again, it's all relative to how old you are and when you started following
point of reference. Yeah, absolutely.
My first season ticket was the 2000-2001 treble season. I was 16 at the time. And so Martin O'Neill's Celtic is a vintage Celtic to me. Larsson, Sutton, Hartson, Alan Thompson, Lubo. Towards the end of his time at Celtic.
Not a bad side, Liam.
No. And then of course backed up with the kind of midfield dig that you needed with the likes of Neil Lennon and Paul Lambert as well. Mm-hmm. Johan Mialbi, just Big Drago as they used to call him. It was that was just a team of not just a great footballing team, but a team of real characters as well. And I don't think it's a slight on the players now, but you don't really see that side to footballers anymore, because they're that sheltered through, everything's filtered through social media and PR and all this. And, back then you could read about where the players went for a night out that Saturday or whatever, but that doesn't really happen anymore. So.
No, it doesn't. I thought that was quite an interesting take by Phil Differ last week, just to drop another wee bit of promotion for this as Acsom. He spoke about how great Only an Excuse was back in the day. And he did speak about BBC involvement, Ian, and how, once somebody tries to get involved and, turn a band into a brand and all this kind of stuff, it really takes the creativity out of it. So he did point that out, but he also pointed out the lack of characters and personalities like what Liam's just done there. And that's one thing that Martin O'Neill's team didn't lack. And the one big thing for me is, look at the captains they had in that team, right? So Neil Lennon for me was a captain, Tom Boyd, Paul Lambert, Jackie McNamara. These guys were all captains and leaders, but they had just the right blend for me, Ian, of physicality and finesse. And I think that what we've been lacking over the last few seasons is the physical aspect of it. I think we're bullied, not so much at home. I mean, by the way, if you come up against a team like Killie, and we'll talk about this, and they're full of hammer throwers, which they are, that's, for me, that's not physicality. That's just dirty. I think the physicality we're talking about, and we've kind of spoken about this, the core of this season's signings, Kasper Schmeichel, Austin Trusty, Arnie Engels, Adam Ida. There's your spine of physicality. And then you've got the finesse and the technical ability of guys like Kuhn and Hatate and Maeda, etc. So I think we're getting the right blending of the type of team that Liam's talking about. O'Neill, he had the finesse, he had the physicality.
He did. When we said it a few weeks ago, and Jim Orr said it as well, when we said about that O'Neill team, it was a team of men. And when he said that, certainly when I say it, I mean it is that sort of blend of physicality plus experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you have that blend of the two, then it stands you in good stead. You're not wet behind the ears. You've got some experience, some miles in the tank, and you're physically, you're able to sort of deal with the sort of the trials and tribulations that come up. So, obviously Victor Wanyama was a guest in the Leipzig game. He was probably one of the most sort of recent times that type of player that we've kind of missed.
Yeah,
I think when we lost him, we didn't really replace him. Scott Brown was, I suppose we'd say, was a physical player, but wasn't sort of the biggest in stature. So I'm glad that he's sort of recognised that, and you need it for games like away at Rugby Park on that pitch. We didn't show ourselves in the best light for whatever reason. We never tend to do, really, but we got it over the line, as I said before. So I think I completely trust. You know how I feel about Brendan Rodgers. I completely trust him. And in terms of recruitment, I know it's been sort of patchy in terms of recruitment. The last time we was here and things like that, but that is a team effort. So hopefully, with the new appointment as well, that bodes well, and we can start to sort of, it's just get those recruitments right. The last window proved that we can do it. So hopefully now the next one and the one after that continues in the same vein, and who knows where that'll take us.
The big thing for me, Ian, right, is that bizarrely enough, after a really dominant run of form, whereby we won 9 league titles in a row, and then we had that horrible season that we'll never forget. We had to do a rebuild. Ange came in and had to do a rebuild, and that's bizarre, really, because you've got the core group of a team there who had been successful massively. I mean, we're talking quadruple, treble successful, and we had to rebuild that. And then you look at Brendan Rodgers coming in at the beginning last season, Liam, and he's coming on off the back, 5 trophies out of 6 under Ange, successful run, brilliant. But it felt as though there was a huge amount of work to be done. Are we finally at the stage now, Liam, where when you go into a transfer window, we're probably talking 2 acquisitions, maybe 3 or 4 if you're replacing a couple of first teamers. But we're at that stage at the moment where we're not going in every single time to try and rebuild the side. That's the feeling I'm getting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it's been a transitional period, which it's only really this season we've properly emerged from it. Last season was up and down, and I criticised the manager a lot, particularly in the first half of last season, and I stand by that because at the time it was valid criticism. And the team have improved immensely since then, and I think it is just because now we are getting to where we have the team the manager wants. We all know that first transfer window wasn't really a Brendan Rodgers transfer window, right? And then it was a kind of patchwork job to get last season's title over the line because of the huge finances of this new Champions League format. Winning the league last season was arguably, well, from a financial point of view, it was Celtic's most important league title. The fans' point of view, probably not as important as 1998, but that's another story. But yeah, we had to get it over the line, and we did, and now we're really starting to see the benefit of that because we've been able to spend more money, and we've been able to build the team from a position of strength, and hopefully, as Ian says, this is laying a foundation for much bigger things to come.
Yeah, You're right. I mean, we talk about that kind of early, late 60s, early 70s period. And, casual observers might look at that and say Celtic, it was an anomaly. They won a European Cup. It was an anomaly. And people try and take the shine off that by saying, oh, you only played 9 games to win the European Cup and all this kind of nonsense, right? I mean, around about that time, and I always go back to this, 1967, yes, we did win the European Cup. 66, we got to the semi-final with the Cup Winners' Cup where Liverpool knocked us out with a controversial offside goal. No, they knocked us out. We score a goal that's chopped off for offside. Bobby Lennox was never offside. He was laid in by Joe McBride. And then 2 seasons before that, we get to a European Cup, Winners' Cup semi-final again. And we get beat 4-3 from MTK Budapest, having been 3-0 up. And it goes on, and it goes on. And when you look at the record from 1964 to 1976, it's 13 seasons. On 9 occasions, Celtic get to at least the quarter-final of European competition, regardless of which European competition they're in. So there's a few Cup Winners' Cups in there. But it's an incredible run. And Celtic were, at that kind of period, on the cusp of being a European superpower. When Jockstein leaves, it doesn't continue, unfortunately. Will we ever get there again? It's very unlikely with regards to the financial state that the Scottish game is in. But there is a level we should be operating at, which we haven't been in. And I think that's the frustration. We haven't been operating at the right level. We've definitely been punching below our weight, never mind above our weight. And I think that when you get a few results, it's easy to get carried away. People were coming in and giving us jip about the fact that, we win against Leipzig and all of a sudden we want to rebuild the main stand and do away with the League Cup. You've only won 1 game in Europe kind of thing. But you've got to plan for the future. If you want to be a club who participates in European football, but then turns that participation into a competition and we're competing and we're doing better year on year. Because, I mean, you talk about the investment of Engels and Ida, who we'll talk about at some point today, 20 million quid. That's nothing in terms of Champions League football, Ian. It's absolutely nothing. But if we can do it again next summer, and spend that kind of money on another couple of players, and you're looking at that group of players that you're confident with going into a Champions League game, and it maybe grows from 4 to 6 to 8. Before you know it, you might have 8 or 9 players in that first team's starting 11 who you think can go toe-to-toe with just about anyone. And that's where Celtic need to try and grow and build towards. I think Brendan Rodgers is the man to do it. Vintage, we won't know until the end of the season. But let's talk a wee bit about everything else that's been happening in the world of Celtic. And we'll start. I found it really interesting. I didn't even know who David Coote was, right, before this weekend just passed, because I've said it on here before. I'm so entrenched in the world of Celtic. I don't watch English football. I genuinely don't watch it. I remember when Sky Sports launched the Premier League, I could probably tell you the majority of players in the top league. It was the old Panini sticker book thingy, and every player for every team. You think back in the 80s where you knew players that played with Oxford and all that. I know nothing about English football now. So I had not heard of David Coote. Like everyone else, I've seen the video. I don't think it's AI. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because we've had the discussion on here so many times, Ian, about refereeing integrity, unconscious bias. Seeing somebody on a video saying that they don't like Liverpool and they don't like Jurgen Klopp, is that as bad as or worse than seeing a referee who's just refereed a Glasgow derby in a Rangers pub in Bells Hill? I mean, what's the difference?
There's no difference at all. I mean, I've only seen the footage the same as anyone else. So it was the David Coots, and it sort of sounds like he's a bit drunk and a bit on it with his mates, and kind of almost boasting about his association as a referee. Milner's all right, but the Jurgen Klopp's a so and so. To put it nicely. So that sort of the world we live in, that kind of celebrity, or everyone's a celebrity, but everyone's got access to sort of promote themselves. So whether that guy's biased or not, I don't know. But it must go on in England as well. But the kind of worms that it is in Scotland, we know, especially as Celtic fans, we know how it goes. Remember the '86 League Cup final You know,
I remember it well.
David,
Yeah, the
I remember
Skull Cup. The Skull
Skull
Cup.
Cup,
Remember that?
yeah.
Yeah.
My dad went to it, you know, and it was like, it was a 3-2, and it was an absolute disgrace. A stitch-up job. So, you know, but I mean, that was 86. I mean, Jock Stein obviously was famously said about, you know, if we're good enough, the referees don't matter. So, but, you know, John Beaton, I mean, why there's no investigation or suspension after he's spotted a Rangers pub after an Old Firm game, I don't know. You know, they seem to deal with it in England at least. But in Scotland, it's just a case of, you know, that's just the way it is. So not a lot we can do about it really. But yeah, it's just the way of the world.
I think the only thing we can really do about it is continually highlight it and continually pressurise the club to do something about it. Now, I don't know if Willie Collum will deal with things differently. Have we had an incident similar to that, Liam, since Collum took over as the head of referees? I don't think so. You know, in terms of, here's a referee in a Rangers boozer, and we know he's a Rangers fan. His school yearbook tells us that he's Rangers daft, right? That's not made up. That's not photoshopped, is it?
No.
But what the English game has done is they instantly suspend the individual pending an investigation. And surely that's what we need to do as well. Because, listen, it's all about transparency. You've got to be as white. And if a referee is saying it on video or is having a bevy with his Rangers supporting mates in a Rangers boozer, it's a terrible look because questions will be asked. But I think they've had free reign for so long in Scottish football, Liam, that they think they're untouchable, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, you know, you see it all over the world just now with various political groups and people, whatever. When a certain group have been in charge of a place for so long, equality seems like, you know, they're being oppressed. And I think that is the way it is with these. I mean, you saw the way the referees threw the toys at the pram when they all went on strike, when all Celtic asked for was clarification about what was a blatant act of cheating. You know, in light of everything else that's been going on this week, I wonder just how quickly would it come to the surface and how quickly would the Scottish media be all over it if a referee was found singing rebel songs?
Listen, it's a great point. It's an absolutely great point, right? And again, we'll get on to the moaning-faced Derek McInnes at some point during this show, I'm pretty sure. Someone pointed out, remember the saga of Donald Finlay being at some kind of Rangers sash bash and getting caught on camera. It was pointed out from a news report at the time that McInnes was singing along with him. So, Derek, shut it. Pat Dolan, the Football Heritage podcast number 52, Belfast Celtic, released on the 11th of November. I saw that, Pat. I saw it being advertised and I shared it on Twitter. So give that a listen as well. When I think Belfast Celtic, I think Charles Patrick Tully. That's who I think. So get that checked out. Some great comments coming in. Keep them coming. But for anyone who can't remember as far back as 1986, which was the year the Bluebells disbanded initially, Ian, and Celtic played Dynamo Kiev just after Chernobyl, and fans were told not to go and watch the game and all that kind of stuff. Bizarre times, isn't it? Absolutely bizarre times. The League Cup final, basically what you were referring to is the fact that after the game, David Hay was interviewed, manager of Celtic. We got beat 2-1. And it's one of the games where Brian McClure scores a goal that, it would, you know, if we win the trophy, it's a sensational goal that will be getting shown for, you know, time immemorial, you know, forever. But we never see it because we got beat that day. David Hay wants Celtic to move to English football after the game because he felt at that time that we were being discriminated against by referees. And you'll remember just a few years later, Roy Aitken, when he left Celtic for Newcastle, he gave a big double-page spread to the Daily Record at the time. One of the reasons he said he was leaving was because he was being discriminated against by Scottish referees. So all these things are kind of swept under the carpet, but this is not a new phenomenon. It's been happening for a long, long time. What happened in that game was Tony Shepherd was sent off. Remember, he was sent off the park and then he was told to come back on by the referee. He sent the wrong player off. Maurice Johnston, when leaving the park, blesses himself, right? And what happened there, I spoke to a couple of guys who said that there was a European game. Now, I don't think it was Kiev, but whenever Celtic played away Tommy Burns and a few of the other guys would look for a chapel, right? So wherever they were based, it would be like, right, part of the match day routine would be they'd get up in the morning, Nearly Morecambe would take them for a walk, and they'd go to mass, right? So Tommy Burns was one of the guys who would be scoping this out. It wouldn't be as easy as sticking it in the sat nav or Googling it, right? They'd need to find a chapel where they could go to mass. And even the non-Catholic players would go along because it was part of the routine. And in fact, the only person in the squad who hadn't gone along, and I'll check the fixtures on the wiki, we had just played a European game away from home leading into this League Cup final, was Maurice Johnston. So they were angry at him because he was doing that to antagonise the Rangers fans at the time. He didn't even go to mass a few days or weeks before. But it was a shocking game. It was chaotic. And Davy Hay wanted Celtic out of Scottish football after that. 1986, look it up. Magnet67, you're in and you're commenting on YouTube. Can I project excitedly for a moment and mention 10 in a row is surely on this time? Are we allowed to do that, Liam? It's a bit early for that. We've got 3 in the bag.
Well, I mean, we can't be too early. I mean, we'll never forget that immortal moment when Rangers celebrated that 3-3 win at Ibrox that won them the league title,
Yes, true. What I would say, right, and again, Ken McCluskey appeared on an audio podcast with Acsom during COVID, during the lockdown, and young Declan McConville, who is flying high elsewhere now in Glasgow, he interviewed Ken, and they were talking about the fact that obviously the league had been stopped. The football had stopped in the March as Celtic were top of the league. And I remember back then, nobody really knew how they were going to deal with it. How were they going to deal with the prize, etc., etc.? And what has happened with that is that some within the Scottish football supporting fraternity see the 9 in a row some way tarnished by the fact that we didn't complete that season, Liam. I would like to do another one just to close the book on that, if I'm going to be honest with you, Liam, right? We've done the first 9 in a row under Jockstein, one manager, no questions asked. The second one, everybody not of a Celtic persuasion will always throw that wee grenade in. Let's do it again to shut them up.
Yeah. And, it shouldn't matter, but I think winning 10 titles, while there is some incarnation of Rangers in the league as well, is going to silence a lot of those same Muppets.
Yes, yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah, because obviously we started the last 9 in a row in 2012, and obviously our Rangers came into the league at some point during that run. So no, that's a good point as well. Kevin Mullen, you're in afternoon Acsom. As much as I hate international break, we are in a good place, going strong on all fronts. Special season it could turn out to be. Let's hope so. Absolutely. Let's talk about Kilmarnock, Ian. I think it was one of the days. We knew that we're going to have days like that, going for a league championship. We've spoken about the pitch. We've spoken about the kind of tactics of the manager and the approach of the Kilmarnock players. But it's just a different type of challenge. And guys like Engels, who weren't great at the weekend, need to get used to that, because that's what happens in Scottish football.
Well, that's part of his learning, isn't it? It's he's still early days from coming into the team. Same for a lot of the other players, It's good now that Kuhn's got that robustness that he didn't have when he first joined, So he's he's learning and developed. So he's about 6 months further down the line, isn't he, than the likes of Engels, or is it even a season? But anyway, so he's further down the line, So he's adapted. It was a strange one for excuse me. It was a strange one for Adam Ida. It just seemed like it was just a complete off day for him, and nothing was sticking. When it started that early pass back he did, and he was put through it, looked like a tap in, and he just passed it back to the keeper. And thankfully, Cal Mack's cross went in directly in, because I think if Ida had got his boot on it, it'd end up in the stands. Such was the way his day went. But it was a funny day at the office, really. So we weren't at it at all. Even Maeda seemed like he was off the pace. For me, anyway, as an observer. So. But just again, I'm glad we got the points in the bag and got it over the line.
When we talk about Ida and Engels, because these are the two guys, Liam, that a lot of people are talking about in relation to their performances. I don't have any real concerns. They're going to have bad games. I think the one player you've got to look at in terms of not writing someone off too soon is Nicholas Kuhn. because, you know, at the end of last season, people are looking at him thinking that's another £3 million, and what we're getting here, we didn't have any kind of level of consistency. We know that there was other issues at play, but what we're now seeing is somebody who's been absolutely transformed into our star man. Let's be honest. Ida and Engels are getting a bit of stick. Any concerns on your part, Liam Carrigan?
No, I'll say the same thing I said with Kuhn last season. You know, ask me again in 6 months. I think that especially when you're coming into Scottish football from a very different league, you really do need some time to settle in, especially in the case of, we're talking about two pretty young players here. And I think particularly with Ida, you can see that he has the qualities of a good striker, but he's still very raw in a lot of respects. And, you know, it takes 6 months, maybe even a year to see the best of him. So, no judgment from me yet. At the moment, he's coming into the squad when required, and he's doing a good job. And it's, you know, it is what it is. He's doing well, and I think he's going to be fine. I think both of them are going to be fine in good time.
I agree.
Yeah, I would also say that what I would like to see actually as we move on, and hopefully once the league is concluded earlier than usual, I want to see a new goalkeeper get a run as well. Casper has been absolutely outstanding since he came in, but we really do, if we're going to look to the future, we need to get some game time into this young boy to get him up to speed for when the time comes that he does step in.
Talking of goalies, I cannot go back to Ian without asking you about this jersey that you are currently sporting, Liam. I know that you are a football kit aficionado, and there are many people in the comments saying that's not another blue top, is it, Liam?
It's predominantly purple and silver with, you know, a couple of blue accents to it. It's mostly a purple shirt, I thought. I don't know, but from that, you know, people talk about, it's blue, it's Rangers. Yeah, from that great bastion of Protestantism that is Argentina. Aye.
I remember, I do know someone whose father slabbed his front and back garden due to the colour of the grass. Yes, it's just one of the things. People have an issue. As my wee fella says, blue, it's a nice colour though, Daddy. Yeah, absolutely, it is, son. No problem.
St. Patrick's colour, is it no?
Yeah, there's not an issue.
When my dad played for St. Patrick's Boys Guild alongside Frank McGarvey, that was the shirt they wore.
Yeah, nice. McGarvey. Much missed, Frank. Franny Weldon. Can I get a mention first instead of that jungle guy? Sorry, Franny, I didn't see your message until after the jungle guy had got a message already. And Urban Culture is starting a conspiracy theory here that he finances Acsom, and that's why he is on first. What do you think? Now, I'm going to read out that 2017 Scottish Cup final team again, right? And I'm going to ask you the question. So, Craig Gordon, Mika Lustig, Dedrick Boyata, Jozo Simunovic, Kieran Tierney, Callum McGregor, Scott Brown, Stuart Armstrong, Patrick Roberts, Lee Griffiths and Scott Sinclair. Would that team beat the current Celtic side? Let us know in the comments section. I know it's fantasy football, but why not? Would that side beat the current Celtic team? There's quite a lot of kind of head-to-heads. It would be quite interesting. You know, we would have Kyogo up against Simunovic and Boyata. That would be an interesting head-to-head. We would have our two wingers. So Kuhn would be up against Kieran Tierney, and we would have Maeda up against Mika Lustig. It'd be a tasty, tasty challenge, Liam. Let's be honest. It'd be a cracker. How do you think it would go?
You know, it's hard to say because I love the team the way they are now, but that team as well was something really special. And I know it sounds like fence sitting, whatever, but I don't really want to pick one over the other because I can't. It's like asking. It's like you know. It's like saying, would you rather have a chicken curry or a lamb curry? It's like, I like curry. Can I not just enjoy both of them? You know? Before I forget, our man Franny there, he is one of the guys in the draw for the Celtic shirt, which I will make at some point today.
Oh, brilliant. Superb. The Samaras Celtic away jersey. Franny, you're in the draw. We are going to be mentioning who the champ is later on today. Let's not forget before we wrap it up. James Devine. You are in a chilly Krakow. It's a bit misty over here. Don't know. There's a bit of a mist, quite spooky and eerie. Obviously, you guys in Japan and New Zealand, different time zones and all the rest of it. But we're here to talk about Celtic. Joe Hamilton. Brendan is building something very special. He's one of us. He's made his money. Now it's about his legacy. Someone pointed out that we're halfway through his contract. Ian, that's a bit scary. That already we're halfway through this 3-year deal. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but at what point do you sit him down and say, right, can we make this a wee bit of a longer deal here? Because he signed up for 3 years initially.
I think it's essential. It's but it'll be down to Brendan. I think it was always going to be down to Brendan. I think if he wants it, he'll get it. Dermot Desmond obviously holds him in very high regard. Is it safe to say now that the Green Brigade are now back on board with him, aren't they? Would you say?
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not like something. It's not like a spokesman's come out and said, "Oh yeah, you're all right, Brendan. You're back in the fold." But it seems to have, he seems to have been sort of routinely accepted back, and rightly so. Get him signed up. I think I was going to ask the question before, and I don't know what you boys think about this, but it seems to me that this new format of the Champions League is potentially a precursor to a European League. I think it was, if you look at the layout, the signs are all there, and then that lends itself to the question, because I know that there's a lot of the English teams, their fans protested when their teams sort of signed up to it initially, the Liverpools, the Arsenals, the Tottenhams and things like that. As Celtic fans, would we accept it? Would we join a European Super League? For me, because we've tried to leave Scottish football for a while now, for reasons that we've just discussed before about the refereeing situation, things like that. But if we've hit that ceiling, I think it would be a good for a club like Celtic. But it depends how it is. If it's just this filthy lucre and the soul's gone, and we lose that aspect of it, I'd rather stay. I'd rather stay in Scottish football and just retain our soul. But it's a question to you and to the people who are listening. What do you think?
The big thing for me, Ian, right? I just want the best for Celtic, and if you were given a blueprint of what Scottish football was going to look like and what changes were going to be made to improve the whole infrastructure of the game, from youth development right through to the plastic pitches, every single aspect of Scottish football needs to be reviewed. And it's happened before, and it goes around in cycles, etc., etc. And a wee bit of success a lot of the time, takes your focus away from it. But if Scottish football had a plan and Celtic could improve as part of that plan, I'd be all for it. I've got nothing against Scottish football. It's the game that I have been involved in as a supporter, that I've invested in as a supporter my entire life. But I don't see a plan. I absolutely don't. I don't see even the basic things of, right, what's your best income stream? Scottish football. What's your best income stream? Oh, it's the fans. Let's lock them out. Let's treat them like cattle. Let's make it, so that it's not very welcoming or inviting to go to a game in Scotland. Liam, you see it differently over in Japan, the way that, clubs and associations treat supporters. I'm talking pricing. I'm talking about the treatment at the games. We'll see it, and we've spoken about it time and time again this season. It's going to continue. Scottish football is eating itself alive, shutting out fans and having the worst broadcasting deals. The best income stream that Scottish football has is the fans, and we don't look after them.
No. And, compare that to over here, where later this month, my wife and I are going to the Japanese, the Emperor's Cup final, the equivalent of the Scottish Cup final over here.
The Emperor's Cup final? That sounds a bit kind of Star Wars, does it not?
Aye.
Did you name it, Liam? Tell the truth.
Oh, no, that is what it's called. Look, it's called the Emperor's Cup, right? Because we're one of the few countries that still has an emperor. And unlike the mob over in the UK, at least he's not married to any of his cousins or whatever. So, there is that.
Yeah.
But anyway, back on point. My wife and I are going to go to that game. We're going to make a weekend out of it, stay in Tokyo. And we know we're going to be well treated. I know I can take my wife to a game and we'll be able to get food and drinks. We'll have comfy seats. There'll still be a great atmosphere. We'll see a pretty decent standard of football. And most of all, it's not going to break the bank. We got slightly more expensive than standard tickets because we want to have a good view, right? But even then, it was still only an equivalent to about 25 quid a head. And that's for the cup final.
Yeah.
You know, the biggest football game on the
showpiece.
Japanese calendar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The big thing for me, Liam, is should that be your biggest income stream? Probably not. You look at some of the other, Germany, for example, and the famous quote from their chairman talking about season ticket prices and how they are able to make the pricing so low and so competitive and fan friendly. And it's because the comment was something around the line of, or the point of, it would, we're losing 2 million a year, but what's 2 million to a club like Borussia Dortmund? Fantastic if you can do that. Scottish football needs to look after the supporters because we're so rubbish at selling the game to broadcasters and advertisers. I mean, we've had seasons where our national tournaments haven't even had a sponsor. Imagine being in a business, Ian, where that's your job. That's your full-time job. Make sure the 3 trophies have got a sponsor and you fail. But in Scottish football, failure's almost embraced because we just say, that's what it's like. We can't compete with all these other nations. How no? Why can't we compete? Scottish football has an anomaly in so far as it's so well supported. That's a massive anomaly when you look at the Scottish game, and that's who we need to look after. It's the fans that actually pay and buy season tickets and buy merchandise, etc. And if the Scottish game can't sort that out, for me, the future is elsewhere. I mean, I sometimes go back on the old stories, like we were talking about Davy Hay earlier. In many ways, ahead of the curve, talking about getting out of the Scottish game. There was also Alan McDonald. You'll remember he took over the role of Fergus McCann when McCann left the football club. And he spoke about, at the time, getting involved in the Super League back then. But the one thing that I like about it, when I look back on the kind of prospect of that, was promotion and relegation. So it wasn't like you left forever. If you joined the European Super League and you were rubbish, you got relegated back into your region. So Celtic would drop back out of that league and back into Scotland. And another team in Scottish football would have the opportunity to be promoted into that league. So for me, that worked. I thought that worked wonders. It wasn't a closed shop, Ian. But I'll go back to it. For me, Scottish football is ran by all the wrong people and always has been.
Yeah, because we're sort of, I suppose, counted as a backwater. That's the caliber of professionals that we're getting in these key positions. So you're not getting the cream de la creme of marketing, promotional people, executives coming in to sort of do that job. They're all sort of swimming in the bigger leagues. But I suppose to complete the circle of my last point was the reason I sort of mentioned was the Super League was that would be the enticement to keep Brendan. I'm sure, at the moment when you go to another club that's in a sort of a European league situation, and how would that, if that did happen as well, how would it affect the English Premier League? But I think that would be a really good way to sort of keep the caliber of manager long term, such as Brendan Rodgers. But yeah, in terms of the other side of it, in terms of Scottish football and how that would be brought up to a standard, what would provoke it? What would change the status quo? We don't treat the fans well. You look at the best model that in Europe, I would say, is Germany. Look at it's still €200 you can pay for a season ticket at Bayern Munich, one of the bastions of Europe, one of the biggest teams. Look at all the sort of the football you see there for €200 or whatever. And I haven't confirmed that, but I've read that, I'm sure. So it always stuck in my mind. But I'm pretty sure it's the same at Dortmund and things like that, where the fan experience is really, really the top priority. The fan zones, all that stuff, the investment in it, and you've mentioned this before as well. Look at Celtic Park. If we just look at our own club in isolation, the potential around about the area, the regeneration. Obviously you've got the Emirates centre across the road, but surely we could get some governmental funding as well, and really, keep adding to the regeneration of the area. Make it a destination. The hotel has fallen by the wayside. Extending the stadium and all that kind of stuff. Like Man United, they're saying that Old Trafford's decrepit and they want to build a new stadium. It's probably partly to keep up with the Joneses. I know there's a lot of repairs that have to go on, but our stadium, I think that a lot of the extensions at Old Trafford happened in '96, mid '90s. That's when our stadium was regenerated as well. So, times move on. There's a lot of infrastructure work that could go on around Celtic as well to bring that up and sort of increase the fan experience, and if we do it, if we lead the way, then maybe other teams would do it as well. Look at inventive ways of doing it in their own areas.
Yeah, definitely. When we did the Wander Around Paradise for about a season, it was always on my mind, Ian. It was always on my mind. When I walked round and I went down Janefield Street, where you're actually under the stand on that road, and people would drive up and down that road at about 50 mile an hour, by the way. It was treacherous. I'm looking at breeze blocks and I'm thinking to myself, Celtic have got one of the most illustrious histories in world football. Why am I looking at grey breeze block here? Where's the history? Get it up there on murals or big screens or something. There's so much more we could do. I always felt that the clover on the right-hand side as you walk up the Celtic Way should be a bandstand on match day. There needs to be fan zones. There needs to be places where you can, eat and drink and all this kind of stuff. And the big thing for me, and I said it last week, if you've got any city or town in Scotland and you make sure that the football team's doing well and the main music kind of venue is doing well, then it breathes life into the city, breathes life into the town, into surrounding areas. There was a study done in relation to what Celtic brought to Glasgow, and it's a multi-million-pound operation every single time Celtic have a sellout. Businesses in and around Celtic Park on a Champions League night, hotels, restaurants, cafes, even the high street where you think about thousands of fans coming to Celtic Park from a different. But bizarrely enough, they want to go shopping as well. So loads of money is generated by Celtic having 60,000 in their stadium. We need to embrace that. Like you say, we need to be the leaders. We are already the leaders, but we can be even better at it. And hopefully that rubs off. But I don't see any blueprint for Scottish football. I see no plan. Everybody that I speak to who has been involved in it basically says it's like banging your head against a brick wall, trying to bring in or implement anything that's different from the norm. Now, Quinny comes in. We're talking vintage Brendan. Would this current team beat the team that lined up to win the 2017 Scottish Cup final? And Quinny reckons that Lustig versus AJ is a tough one. Guys, I'm going to ask you, starting with you, Liam. Right, you've got vintage Mika Lustig, you've got vintage Alistair Johnston. Who plays?
I'll
get off the fence.
Alistair Johnston, but he is quite possibly one of my favourite Celtic players at the moment. So I love the guy's energy. I love his attitude. I love his all-round game. And as I did with Lustig as well, it's a really tough call, but perhaps it's recency bias, but I'm going with Alistair Johnston.
That's a massive call, actually, and it's a good discussion point because Lustig has got the kind of the cult iconic status about him, Ian. So you can basically go down that road, but then you look at the actual planes. And by the way, he was a great player. I actually felt that Lustig, when he left the club, I felt he had another season in him, and I thought we should have maybe just brought him into the more of a central area so that he didn't have to go up and down that line. He was becoming less mobile with age. Had issues with his hips, and I felt we should have kept him for his experience, but kind of moved him into a right-sided defender, central defender, rather than a right back. But he left, and he's a cult icon, absolutely. AJ, like Liam, is one of my favourite players at the moment in this current Celtic crop. Who gets the nod for you, Ian Conroy?
AJ, as much as I love you, it's Lustig for me. I can't see past Lustig because Lustig's earned that legendary status. I think if AJ stays long enough, he can maybe take the mantle or certainly equal it. But as it stands at the moment, and again, as much as I love AJ, it's Lustig. I can't go past Lustig.
It's a good discussion. Now, Gordon Coney, you're confusing me here. Brendan's team wins on athleticism and speed. They're both Brendan's teams. Do you mean the 2017 one or the current one? Let us know. And McLaughlin P comes in to say Kuhn, Sinclair and Dembele. Sounds tasty. Yeah, it absolutely does. Dembele for me was brilliant. He was kind of getting into my all-time Celtic 11. And what I mean by that is the team that I've seen. So since I started watching Celtic, I think we've all got an idea of what your favourite Celtic 11 would be. Dembele's in and around that for me. I thought he was a sensational player for Celtic. Danny Boy, morning all from Motherwell by the Sea. Unconscious bias, says Monty. I would argue it's very much a conscious bias. And Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, people are going to be saying you're one of my favourites as well. You've been up every day this week. He navigated stormy waters last season. Now he's in full control, steaming ahead. I knew we'd get peak Brendan this season after him saying to a Chelsea player gave it the "that's a Brendan team" patter. There's a message in everything that he says, Liam. Brendan Rodgers knows how to use the media to his advantage. And when he's saying things like that, he's saying something else. There's hidden meanings when he puts that out there, isn't there?
Do you know, while we're talking about Brendan Rodgers, apologies, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here, but
We like tangents.
I've had a bee in my bonnet about this whole week, right? And some people have commented about it today as well. It's interesting to note how there's been nothing but performative outrage from the media about the whole silence thing on Sunday, right? Yet Brendan Rodgers wore a poppy, which is everybody's free choice. And I have not seen any, there probably are some, but I have not seen any Celtic fans moaning about that. It's all one way with this nonsense, and it's all entirely performative.
It is performative, yeah. You're spot on. Now, this is the thing as well. People who are maybe casually observing this from the outside are often swayed by the propaganda machine. So it's Celtic equals bad. And that's the message that's getting put out there, Ian. And I think that the advent of online platforms such as this, where anyone can have an opinion, in terms of propaganda, it's cutting out that propaganda. By the way, it's increasing conspiracy, absolutely. But it's giving you the opportunity and to actually look at a far more balanced viewpoint from both sides and come to your own conclusion. If you so desire, there's a lot of people don't want to do that. They just want to hear what the mainstream says and they'll run with it.
Yeah, look, I don't know how. I mean, James Clean and his story, it's like I mean, banging his head against a brick wall every Remembrance Sunday, But I'm with this on the side. I don't wear a poppy. I didn't wear a poppy, and it was like if it was for the First World War and the Second World War alone, then I would. But it's not. It's for all conflicts, all things involving the British Army. So, and obviously the things that happened in Ireland, which are well documented. It's a very, very, it's a major, So, we have the right to sort of pick and choose. And I think a lot of it's full outrage. It's certainly English media, and you have the kind of the sort of the tabloid newspapers that just love to churn it all up, and I was listening to Talk Sport, and the sort of the condemnation that comes with that, the sensation, and the balance they had. They had a Celtic fan on who was an ex-service person who was outraged by it, and it's like the narrative's always set in a certain way. Look, it is what it is. We're not going to change it, It's it sells newspapers, the division is very, very, very good for business in lots of areas. So. Look, I think we just have to accept it. Every year there's going to be people who don't agree with it and will voice it in the way that they do.
It's freedom of expression, but only one way. Say you're going to a Celtic game and you're walking up these steps and someone somewhere in the authority of Scottish football has decided that there's going to be a minute's applause for the passing of the Queen, or there's going to be a minute's silence for Remembrance Sunday. You're a Celtic fan going to watch a football team. Surely you then have a choice. You have a choice yourself if you partake in this or not. But to say stay at the ground until it's finished, it's like, really, are we in South Korea now? Can we not make our own decisions here? So it's one of these things. Honestly, set your alarm by it. Same time next year, we'll be talking about this. Henrik McLaughlin, sorry, Liam, did I interject here?
I was just going to add one wee thing on that. Ultimately, none of the people who are commenting about this, in my opinion, are qualified to comment on it. But you know who was? My granda, right? My granddad was a World War II vet. Passed away 36 years ago. He's long gone. But he said something to my dad, which my dad has in turn passed down to me, which I think is very... Now remember, this is the guy who fought in World War II, the guy that all these flag-shagging, poppy-waving people are supposed to be honouring, right? He said, the Earl Haig Fund is nothing but a scam. Earl Haig was never within 100 miles of a shot the entirety of his military career. He says, it's all performative. It's all about gestures. He said, if any of them actually gave a damn about veterans, there would not be a single homeless veteran in the country. There would not be a
100%.
single person wanting for anything. Whether you agree with the reasons or not, anybody who picks up a weapon in defence of their country and believes they're doing it honourably, with honourable intention, should want for nothing when that time's over. And that's certainly not the case for my granddad's generation. And he saw it for what it was. And he said something to me which I think is very, very prevalent today. He says, we were all just working class men then. He said, we were told the Germans are the bad guys, go and kill the Germans. Then you were told the Italians are the bad guys, go and kill the Italians. Then you're told, actually, the Italians are the good guys, don't kill them anymore. And then he said, all the while, I'm thinking, you know what? Aye, Hitler's a badging, got to be taken down, no question. But I've got more in common with the average German guy in that bunker than I have with most of the people calling the shots in London.
Yeah. Absolutely, mate. And I think I said South Korea. Yeah, I've got Yang on the brain. I meant
North Korea. I was going to say you'll get in trouble for that one.
I meant the North. Absolutely. Back to other matters. Henrik McLarson says, would AJ suit a Bobby's helmet, though? Come on, Henrik. I think Lustig wore it well. That's all I'm going to say. Right, Liam, you've got a draw to make, and there's going to be some people tuning in today who will be part of this draw. This is for, remind us, this is for a George's Samaras at least match prepared jersey. It might be a match
jersey here. So, contrary to some people in the comments, I do own Celtic shirts and I do wear Celtic shirts. I don't always wear blue. So, who is our winner? Let's see.
Winner is you or I, Ian, or it'll be a fix.
I know exactly. Yeah.
My wife. No, I'm only kidding. It is, and apologies, I'm going to butcher your name here. Tregiva Sterker, one of our listeners from Norway. Fantastic. Who very kindly donated. So, Tregiva, I hope I'm pronounced your name right. Apologies if I'm not, mate. Please find me on Facebook, send me your address, and that shirt will be in the post to you directly. I will also leave a message on the Acsom Facebook page later on about this to make sure that you get in touch. So thank you, and thank you to everybody who donated. I wish I could give out more than one shirt, but unfortunately, I'm only an English teacher, so I don't have that kind of money.
No, great effort from yourself, Liam. If you're struggling to get in touch with Liam and you listen to this show, email me at pauljohndykes@gmail.com and I'll pass your details on to Liam. Great effort from your good self. We've been talking a wee bit of nostalgia today. We've been talking about previous Celtic sides and a vintage Brendan Rodgers. Let us know your comments in the comments section. How would that game go? The 2017 Scottish Cup winning side, which clinched an invincible treble against the current crop. Who'd win? Who'd come out on top? And if you were to do a starting 11 combined, who would make the starting 11 as well? Celtic stars from the centenary team will be joining us on the 19th of December, just before Christmas. Great opportunity for a Christmas night out. It's Roy Aitken, Peter Grant and Pat Bonner all on the stage. I'll probably just pass them a mic and let them run with it. Over 1,500 Celtic appearances between them. Come and join a wee bit of the old Christmas fun with Acsom. Ticket link underneath the video. And all that's left for me to say once again, Ian Conroy and also Liam Carrigan, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.